Have you ever wondered how a small act from someone in the past could completely change a person's fate? One day, Elon Musk, the billionaire behind Tesla and SpaceX, returned to his old high school, hoping to relive memories of his youth. But instead of just reminiscing, he stumbled upon a haunting truth. The former janitor, Mr. Salvador Vargas, was still quietly cleaning the hallways at the age of 80, struggling with excruciating pain in his aging legs. That shocking realization set off a chain of unforeseen events. A surprising decision by Elon that not only transformed the old man's life, but also rewrote the future of thousands. But in the end, what exactly did he do? When billionaire Elon Musk decided to return to his old high school, he only wanted to revisit a few memories from the past. Visions of an ambitious but often lonely youth. Without notifying the administration, without needing a grand welcome, he simply sought a private moment to quietly walk through the hallways that had once been a part of his life. But the moment he stepped onto the school grounds, what he found was not just nostalgia, it was an unexpected truth. A figure from his past, someone he assumed had long been forgotten, yet a person who had once silently protected him during his most vulnerable days. Elon walked slowly down the long hallway, the familiar scent of chalk and freshly cleaned floors triggering memories that had been buried for nearly 40 years. The red brick walls stood strong as ever. The towering windows still reflected the same warm golden light. Everything felt strangely familiar. He reached out, running his fingers along the wall, tracing the cracks in the old paint, as if he could turn back time just by standing there. But then a sudden sound interrupted his thoughts. The soft swish of a broom against the tiles, the quiet roll of a mop bucket's wheels. A familiar silhouette entered his view, and in that instant, he was pulled back into the past. At the end of the hallway, an elderly man was diligently scrubbing a stain on the floor. His faded gray-blue uniform, slightly hunched posture, and slow but steady steps revealed years of labor. He moved carefully, his thin hands gripping the broom as if every motion had become second nature. Elon squinted, a sense of familiarity stirring inside him, but he couldn't immediately place the man. Then, as the janitor lifted his head and their eyes met, Elon froze in place. "Mr. Vargas?" The name slipped from his lips before he had time to think. The old janitor hesitated for a second, then recognition flickered in his eyes. "Musk?" His voice, rough with age, still carried the warmth Elon remembered. A faint smile crossed his deeply wrinkled face. Elon stepped forward quickly, unable to hide his astonishment and emotion. "It's really you. After all these years, you're still here?" Mr. Vargas leaned slightly on his broom, steadying himself, then nodded with the same gentle smile. 52 years, kid, but I'm not young anymore." Elon looked at the man before him, his heart heavy. This was Salvador Vargas, the school janitor who had once shielded young Elon Musk from bullies. He had always been there, never speaking much, but always present. During Elon's loneliest, hardest days, the library had been his only refuge, and somehow Mr. Vargas had always been nearby, quietly cleaning. When the kids who tormented Elon appeared, Mr. Vargas just happened to be there, broom in hand, his watchful eyes keeping them at bay. Back then, Elon hadn't thought much about it. He had only felt safer when Mr. Vargas was around. But now, standing before the aging man, seeing his calloused hands and hunched back, Elon felt a pang of sadness. A man who had spent his life protecting others had been left unprotected himself. Why are you still doing this job?" Elon asked, his voice quieter. Mr. Vargas shrugged as if the answer was simple. "I love this place. It's my home. I've watched generations of kids walk these halls, seen shy boys grow into confident men, seen troublemakers turn into good people. Every day I'm here, I feel like I still have a purpose." Elon stood in silence. There was no bitterness in Mr. Vargas's voice, no complaints about life. But that quiet acceptance only made the situation more heartbreaking. A man who had given over half a century to this school was still working at 80, his legs aching with every step. He shouldn't be here. He should be resting, living a better life. A flood of questions raced through Elon's mind. Did Mr. Vargas have a pension? Did anyone care for him? Was his salary enough to survive? What would happen if he could no longer work? And why had someone like Mr. Vargas, who had touched so many lives, been forgotten? But above all, one thing was clear. Elon couldn't let this continue. Mr. Vargas, Elon said firmly, do you have time for a cup of coffee? I'd love to hear more about your life. Mr. Vargas blinked, seemingly surprised by the offer. A man like Elon Musk with an impossibly busy schedule wanted to sit down and talk with an old janitor. But then a small smile crept onto his face. For you? Of course. Give me 20 minutes. Let me finish this hallway. Elon nodded, but as Mr. Vargas turned back to his work, he quickly pulled out his phone and texted his assistant, Talia. Reschedule my meeting in Cape Town. Something important came up. Talia replied instantly. You can't do that. The minister won't be happy. Elon's response was short. I'll make it up to him, but this can't wait. Slipping his phone back into his pocket, Elon watched Mr. Vargas's frail frame moving down the hallway. One of the most important people in his life was still here, right in front of him, and this time, Elon wouldn't let the moment slip away. Elon Musk silently watched the man in front of him, his mind heavy with countless thoughts. Mr. Vargas was stirring his coffee, his thin but steady hands moving with the ease of someone who had spent a lifetime performing quiet, unnoticed tasks. The lines on his aged face bore the unmistakable marks of time, of decades of dedicated labor. But more than anything, his eyes remained as kind as ever. The eyes of someone who had always observed, always understood, yet never asked for anything in return. Elon took a deep breath, set his coffee down, and spoke in a calm yet resolute tone. Mr. Vargas, why are you still here after all these years? You should be resting, enjoying your time with your family. Mr. Vargas chuckled softly, a smile on his face that held no bitterness, just the quiet acceptance of someone who had long made peace with his reality. I love this place, Mr. Musk. I've watched countless generations of students grow up in these hallways. Boys who once walked these floors becoming doctors, engineers, businessmen, and even you. Every day I come to this school, I still feel like I have a purpose. I don't want to just sit around and wait for old age to catch up with me. Elon was silent. He understood what Mr. Vargas was saying, but that didn't mean it was right. A man who had dedicated over half a century to caring for the school, to looking after its students as if they were his own, should not have to keep working at 80 just to make ends meet. Do you have family? Elon asked, his voice softer now. Mr. Vargas nodded. I have a son. He lives in Australia. He's an engineer, married with 2 little ones. I'm very proud of him. His eyes flickered with joy for a moment before a quiet sadness took its place. I've never met my grandkids. Plane tickets are expensive, and I don't want to burden my son. Elon clenched his fist, a wave of frustration washing over him. A man like Mr. Vargas, who had spent his entire life helping others, couldn't even afford to see his own family? It wasn't fair. What about your pension? Elon pressed, unable to hide the concern in his voice. Mr. Vargas sighed, his gaze drifting as if he had already resigned himself to this reality. I have a pension, but it's not enough. Prices keep going up. Rent, medication. I work not just because I love this school, but because I don't have much of a choice. Elon bit his lip, trying to suppress the emotions welling up inside him. A man who had spent over 50 years keeping this school clean, Protecting children from bullies had been forgotten by the very system he dedicated his life to. Why had no one taken care of him? Why were people like Mr. Vargas, the ones who played crucial roles in making schools function, pushed aside and left without proper recognition? Elon took a deep breath and looked directly into Mr. Vargas's eyes. "Do you know how much good you've done?" Mr. Vargas let out a small chuckle, shaking his head. "I just did what I thought was right. If a student needed help, I helped. If the school needed cleaning, I cleaned. I never thought I was changing the world." Elon shook his head slightly, his voice growing solemn. "Sometimes the people who don't think they're changing the world are the ones who change it the most." In his mind, everything was becoming crystal clear. This couldn't just be a one-time act of charity. This had to be something systematic, a real plan that could create lasting change. Not just for Mr. Vargas, but for thousands of janitors and school staff around the world who had dedicated their lives to serving others, yet had been forgotten. Elon pulled out his phone, his fingers moving swiftly across the screen. "Talia, I need you to gather all the information on pension plans and benefits for school janitors in South Africa. And look up the cost of knee replacement surgery. Find the best hospital for it." Her reply came almost instantly. "What are you planning?" Elon didn't hesitate. "I'm going to do the right thing." As Mr. Vargas continued sharing stories about his years at the school, Elon was already mapping out his next steps. A funding initiative, a support system, a long-term plan to help not just one, but many people like Mr. Vargas, people who deserve recognition and care, but had never received what they were owed. Mr. Vargas paused in the middle of his story and looked at Elon curiously. "You're thinking about something, aren't you?" Elon chuckled, placing a reassuring hand on the older man's shoulder. "You'll see soon enough. Things are going to change, I promise." Mr. Vargas shook his head with a small smile. "You're still the same as ever, always thinking big." Elon smiled back, but in his heart, the plan was already set. This visit wasn't just a trip down memory lane. It was the beginning of a new mission. Elon Musk stood still, gazing at the elderly man before him with an emotion he couldn't quite put into words. In that moment, he was no longer the powerful billionaire of the world, no longer the founder of multi-billion-dollar companies, but simply an old student reuniting with someone who had once helped him through the hardest times of his life. Yet the way Mr. Vargas smiled, the way he accepted his life with such quiet grace, made Elon feel that something was terribly wrong. A man like him, someone who had silently protected and cared for countless generations of students, should not be spending his final years with aching legs and a salary so meager that he had to keep working. A determination was forming inside Elon. He would not let this continue. Mr. Vargas took a sip of coffee, his eyes gazing out the window. "You know, Musk, when I first started working here, you hadn't even been born yet." He chuckled softly, his voice carrying the weight of memories from a long-gone world. "I've seen so many students walk through these hallways. Some were full of dreams, some were lost, some walked with their heads down as if afraid of the world. And then they grew up, became doctors, teachers, engineers, even inventors. Every year I wonder where they are now." Elon listened in silence, each word flowing like a stream of memories. "And then there was you," Mr. Vargas continued. "You weren't like the others. There was always something in your eyes, as if you were looking further ahead than everyone else." Elon smiled faintly, but he couldn't bring himself to feel any joy. "You helped me more than you realize," he said softly, looking at Mr. Vargas with genuine gratitude. "When I was bullied, when I felt like the world had turned against me, you were always there. You didn't say much, but I knew you cared." Mr. Vargas shrugged, as if his kindness was nothing worth mentioning. "Everyone needs someone to stand by their side," he said simply. "I just did what I could." Elon set his cup of coffee down, his eyes now filled with resolve. "And I will do what I can," he declared, his voice no longer that of a former student, but of a man who had the power to change fate. "How long have you been working here?" 52 years, Mr. Vargas replied with his usual quiet smile. "More than half a century," Elon repeated, as if letting the weight of those words sink in. "And you've never had a real vacation?" Mr. Vargas shook his head. No time for such luxuries. A growing frustration welled up inside Elon. He couldn't accept this reality. A man who had dedicated his life to a school, to its students, deserved better. No decent pension, no official recognition, no one noticing his work except for the children he had once helped, children who had likely forgotten him by now. Suddenly, Elon felt anger, not toward Mr. Vargas, but toward the system that had abandoned him. "You don't deserve to live like this," Elon said bluntly. "You should be resting, living comfortably, spending time with your son and grandchildren." Mr. Vargas sighed, his eyes reflecting a quiet resignation. "That's life, Musk. Not everyone gets a happy ending." But Elon refused to accept that answer. Leaning back, he pulled out his phone and typed a message to his assistant. "Find out everything about retirement pensions and benefits for school janitors in South Africa. Also, look up the cost of knee replacement surgery at the best hospitals." A reply came almost instantly. "What do you plan to do?" Elon didn't hesitate. "I'm going to fix a mistake." Mr. Vargas watched Elon, curiosity in his gaze. "What are you planning, Musk?" Elon looked him straight in the eye. "You'll find out soon." Suddenly he stood up. "I want to walk around the school, but this time, I want you to guide me. Show me the things no one notices, the things that need fixing, the places you've taken care of all these years." Mr. Vargas blinked in surprise, then nodded. "All right, Musk, but prepare yourself. This school has a lot that needs fixing." They walked through the hallways, and for the first time, Elon saw the school not through the eyes of a former student, but through the eyes of someone searching for ways to change it. The cracks in the walls, the leaking roofs, the old worn-out desks. But what struck Elon the most were the little traces left by Mr. Vargas. Repairs done by his own hands, broken chairs reinforced, light bulbs replaced without anyone noticing. Their conversation stretched for hours, and with every story Mr. Vargas shared, Elon's resolve only grew stronger. This couldn't be just a one-time act of charity. This had to be a systemic change, not just for Mr. Vargas, but for all the people like him, those who kept schools running but were never recognized. By the time they returned to the teacher's lounge, Elon had found his answer. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Jim, I need you to prepare a plan," he said, his voice firm with determination. "I want to set up a new fund. A fund to support school janitors, people like Mr. Vargas. We'll start in South Africa, but eventually I want it to be global." On the other end, his lawyer's voice carried a hint of surprise, but also deep respect. "I understand. What do you want to name the fund?" Elon glanced at Mr. Vargas, who was smiling with his usual humility. Musk already knew the answer. "Call it the Vargas Fund." Elon Musk sat in his hotel room in Cape Town, his eyes fixed on the tablet screen displaying the full report Talia had just sent. Rows of numbers, charts, and detailed documents on pension conditions and benefits for school janitors in South Africa stretched across the screen. But what stunned him the most was the shockingly low pension that Mr. Vargas received after more than 50 years of service. Even with that amount, he could barely afford rent, let alone cover living expenses or health care. A wave of indignation surged through Elon. He could not allow someone like Mr. Vargas to continue living like this. He could not let people like him be forgotten. He put down the tablet, took out his notebook, and started jotting down the first notes for his plan. This would not just be a personal act to help Mr. Vargas. It had to be a long-term solution for all the silent workers neglected by the system. Elon called his lawyer. "Jim, I want to establish a new fund. A fund to support people like Mr. Vargas. Janitors, bus drivers, cafeteria staff. Those who keep schools running but are never acknowledged. I want to start with $50 million. There was a brief silence on the other end before Jim responded cautiously. "Elon, this is a huge donation. Are you sure?" Elon didn't need to think. "I've never been more sure. This isn't just about Mr. Vargas. This is about an entire system that needs to change." 3 weeks later, Elon returned to Pretoria Boys High School, but this time he wasn't alone. With him were legal advisors, education experts, and members of the newly established Vargas Fund. As he stepped through the school gates, he noticed the curious glances of students, the murmurs as they recognized the world's richest man returning once again. But this time, he wasn't here for nostalgia. He was here to change the future. Mr. Vargas stood in the schoolyard, still dressed in his familiar janitor's uniform, his eyes filled with surprise as he saw Elon return with an entire team. "You really came back," he chuckled, though there was hesitation in his voice. Elon stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I made a promise, didn't I?" They walked together to the principal's office, where everyone was waiting. Once the room settled, Elon looked around and began speaking. "Today, I'm not just here to visit my old school. I'm here for a man who has dedicated his entire life to this place, but has never received the recognition he deserves." He glanced at Mr. Vargas before continuing. "And I believe there are thousands, millions like him, people who quietly keep schools running, care for students, and help in ways no one notices. It's time they were treated fairly." He opened the folder in front of him and slid it toward the principal. "I've established the Vargas Fund with an initial donation of $50 million. This fund will focus on 3 key objectives. First, improving working conditions and benefits for janitors, bus drivers, and cafeteria staff. Second, providing training and educational programs to help them advance in their careers. And third, offering financial support for people like Mr. Vargas, those who have devoted their lives to service but don't have enough to live a dignified retirement." The room fell silent. The principal flipped through the pages, his eyes widening in astonishment. "This is an incredible initiative, Mr. Musk," he finally said. "We've never had anything like this before." But Elon wasn't finished. He turned to Mr. Vargas. "There's one more thing I want to discuss with you." Mr. Vargas looked at him curiously. "I want to appoint you as the school's first facility manager, a new role I'm introducing. Instead of just being a janitor, you'll oversee maintenance, teach students practical skills, and, most importantly, ensure that no one in this school ever feels forgotten." All eyes in the room turned to Mr. Vargas. The elderly man sat still, his gaze shifting between surprise and emotion. "But he stammered. "I never thought I could do something like that." Elon smiled. "You've been doing it your entire life, Mr. Vargas. I'm just giving it an official title." A single tear slipped down Mr. Vargas's cheek. He cleared his throat, trying to steady himself. "But I can still clean the hallways, right?" Elon chuckled, feeling a sense of relief. "Only if you really want to." The meeting concluded with unanimous support. The principal promised to work closely with the Vargas Fund to implement the changes, while the foundation members began preparing for expansion to other schools. But for Elon, the most important moment was not the contracts being signed or the school board's approval. It came afterward when he and Mr. Vargas walked down the hall, the same halls they had walked through weeks ago. "You really did all this for me?" Mr. Vargas asked, his voice thick with emotion. Elon stopped and looked him straight in the eye. "Not just for you, for people like you, but you were the first person I wanted to help." Mr. Vargas nodded slightly, as if trying to process everything that had just happened. Then he smiled, a smile of relief. "You were always a special kid, Musk. I knew that long ago." Elon placed a hand on his shoulder, a silent but profound gesture of respect. "And you were always the one who made me believe that the world still has good people." That day, the school didn't just gain a new program, it gained a symbol. A man who had spent his life helping others had finally received the justice he deserved. But this was not the end. It was just the beginning of a much bigger change, one that Elon Musk had promised to make, not just for Pretoria Boys High, but for the world. That day, as Elon Musk left Pretoria Boys High School, a strange feeling filled his heart. This was not just a nostalgic return, but a journey of changing destinies. He had walked through hundreds of hallways around the world, stepped into the most advanced research centers, and entered the doors of high-level global meetings. But nowhere had given him the same sense of authenticity as this moment. When he looked into Mr. Vargas's eyes, heard the trembling, emotional voice of the old man, and realized that a forgotten life had finally received the recognition it deserved. But this was not the end. This was only the beginning of a greater journey, a mission that Elon knew he had to pursue to the end. Upon returning to his headquarters, Elon immediately set to work on expanding the Vargas Fund. He assembled a team of advisors from the fields of education, social welfare, and asset management to create a long-term plan for the fund. It would not stop at improving working conditions for school janitors in South Africa. He wanted the program to be expanded worldwide. "We need a system to help people like Mr. Vargas, not just in one school, not just in one country, but across the world," Elon said in the fund's first meeting. "We are going to change the way society sees these silent workers." Beyond financial support, the Vargas Fund launched a new initiative, the Training and Development Program for Educational Support Staff. This program not only aimed to improve salaries and benefits for janitors, but also train them in management skills, maintenance techniques, and ways to create a safe educational environment for students. Elon wanted to transform people like Mr. Vargas into mentors, not just cleaners, but individuals who could teach life skills and perseverance to students. "There are many things that formal education doesn't teach," Elon said. "And sometimes the best teachers are not the ones in the classrooms." As news of the Vargas Fund spread, the world took notice. Major newspapers such as the New York Times, BBC, and The Guardian all covered the story of Elon Musk and Mr. Vargas. The media called it the unexpected humanitarian initiative of a tech billionaire. But for Elon, this was not a PR campaign. It was something he had to do. When Mr. Vargas appeared on a television program to share his story, the world finally learned about the man who had quietly dedicated more than half a century to helping students without expecting anything in return. "I never thought that one day I would be sitting here on TV talking about my work," Mr. Vargas said humbly. "I just did what I believed was right." But an even bigger surprise was yet to come. When Tesla's research team began reviewing old documents that Mr. Vargas had stored for decades, they discovered something incredible. The sketches of an electrical battery system that Elon had discarded at 17 actually had striking similarities to modern-day technologies. Some of the design principles, though rudimentary, had laid the foundation for a new approach to thermal management and battery efficiency optimization. Elon could hardly believe his eyes as he reviewed the old sketches. "I thought these ideas were useless," he told his engineers, "but Mr. Vargas saw their value even before I did." After further research, Tesla decided to patent a new technology based on the principles found in the old sketches. And in an unprecedented move, Elon announced that 5% of the profits from this new battery technology would be transferred to Mr. Vargas's account, as a way to repay the man who had believed in him from the very beginning. When Elon called to give him the news, the old man could barely speak. "I never expected anything in return," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I just thought that maybe one day you might need them." Elon smiled over the phone. You kept my dream safe when I wasn't mature enough to understand its value. Now it's my turn to help you." The money Mr. Vargas received not only allowed him to live comfortably, but also helped him fulfill a dream he never thought possible: visiting Australia to see his son and meet his 2 grandchildren for the first time. As he stepped off the plane in Sydney, tears streamed down his wrinkled face. His granddaughter ran to embrace him, and in that moment, all the sacrifices of his life felt worth it. Meanwhile, at Pretoria Boys High School, the Vargas Innovation Center was officially inaugurated. It was not just a new building, but a symbol of change. In the exhibition area, a section was dedicated to honoring Mr. Vargas, featuring his photographs, stories he had recorded about students over 52 years, and a quote engraved on the wall: "Everyone deserves to be seen." When Elon returned for the inauguration, Mr. Vargas stood beside him, not as a janitor this time, but as a symbol of kindness and dedication. Elon looked at the hundreds of students in front of him, children who would grow up, leave the school, and might forget some lessons, but who would never forget the lesson of kindness. "I learned something from Mr. Vargas," Elon said, "that sometimes the most important people are the ones we pay the least attention to. And when we realize that, it's time to change." That day, as Mr. Vargas and Elon stood side by side, no more words were needed. They both knew that this was no longer just a story about a student and a janitor. This was a story about gratitude, about how small acts of kindness can change a life, and sometimes even the world.